This is the first time I'm telling this story. It happened to me 13 years ago. It was a night that I will never forget. In fact, I still think about it every night. I was 22 years old and found myself on a desolate Oregon highway in the dead of night. My frickin' phone had no signal. And my car had ran out of gas about 2 miles back, and I had been walking ever since. I knew I should have stopped for gas before I entered the long stretch of road, but I was so anxious to get to where I was going, foolishly thinking that I'd get to the next gas station that I'd seen earlier on my GPS before my car ran out of gas. Sadly, that wasn't the case, because there I was, walking on a winding, creepy road in the unforgiving night. The girls' trip in the cabins that I was headed to was still at least an hour away, and it was past 10 p.m. I was already late since most of the other girls were already there, as they had taken off of work or school just for this trip. However, I had to meet with my English professor before I got on the road, and the only time he had available was later in the day. I really needed to make an A in that class to keep my average up, so the meeting for better understanding of a major assignment was important and necessary. Now, walking in the darkness, I heavily second-guessed my decision to drive down so late. With each step I took, the moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy of trees, casting eerie shadows. I cursed under my breath. My blasted phone still had no signal, leaving me no choice but to keep walking, hoping to flag down help or reach a new, closer gas station that maybe wasn't on the map. I continued to hold out hope for that magical, elusive gas station as I walked. I started to hum a tune to break my fearful thoughts, but the darkness remained relentless, and the silence was unnerving. Desperation started to creep in when finally, a pair of dim headlights appeared in the distance. Relief washed over me as I watched the approaching vehicle. It was an old station wagon, faded and worn, but it seemed to be my salvation. The station wagon pulled over, and cautiously, I approached. The car had a rusty scent of decay, and in the driver's seat sat a man with a gaunt face. His eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, even in the pitch-black night. "Need a ride, sweetheart?" he asked, his smile leering. I hesitated but felt desperate enough to accept. I opened the back door and climbed in, only to find 4 others inside. A woman, 2 children, and a teenage boy. Their demeanor was eerie, lifeless, like mannequins brought to an unnatural life. "We're so glad you joined us," the woman said with a knowing grin. The air inside the car grew colder, and dismay gripped my heart. "Thank you for picking me up." "I'm Sarah, by the way," I stammered nervously. No one responded. The children stared blankly ahead, their eyes empty voids. The teenage boy fidgeted with something in his lap, hidden beneath a dirty blanket. "Where are you headed?" asked the man, clearly the leader. I held my breath a beat and answered, "To the nearest gas station. I just need to put gas in my car a couple of miles back. I saw one on my phone map earlier, 5 miles going east, but it would take me too long to walk to it and get back safely in the dark." He just nodded his head. I prayed they wouldn't ask me any more about my phone or why I hadn't called for help, and just drive. Luckily, they did just that. As we continued down the dark and brooding highway, an overwhelming sense of dread enveloped me. I knew something was terribly wrong, and I needed to escape. I discreetly reached into my bag, fingers trembling as I fumbled for my phone, praying for a miracle. It still had no signal and the battery was now almost dead. Dead, a word that was now echoing in my head. But I couldn't let them see any of that. The man driving the car suddenly turned off the highway onto a narrow, overgrown road that led deep into the forest. Panic surged through me. "Hey, where are we going?" "This isn't the way to the gas station," I said desperately. "We're taking a shortcut, honey," the man replied with a growl, then laughed. It was just then that I saw his teeth clearly. He had fangs. He had damn fangs. Oh my God. What was he? What were they? I felt myself going pale as fear ripped through my body. The forest grew more dense, and the station wagon rumbled over uneven terrain. I knew I had to act quickly. When the car hit a particularly large bump, I pretended to stumble and accidentally dropped my bag, allowing my phone to slide out. The man noticed and reached down to pick it up. As he did, I saw my chance. I lunged at the door, flinging it open and rolling out onto the forest floor. Pain shot through my body as I hit the ground and tumbled down a small embankment. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted through the forest, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Behind me, I heard the man shouting and the others piling out of the car. They were chasing me. The forest seemed endless, the trees towering overhead like dark sentinels. Branches clawed at me as I ran, but I didn't dare slow down. I eventually stumbled upon a clearing and saw the lights of another car in the distance. Regardless of what I'd just been through with my near-fatal ride with the demonic station wagon family, I ran towards it, frantically waving my arms and screaming for help. Surely there couldn't be two evil predatory lurkers driving through the night looking for victims. The car I flagged down screeched to a halt, and a young couple inside rushed out to assist me. "Are you okay? What happened?" they asked, their faces filled with concern. I could hardly speak, but I managed to gasp out a few words about the station wagon and the sinister family. The couple immediately called the police. The authorities arrived quickly, and a search was launched for the station wagon and its occupants. As it turned out that the family were on a wanted list with a history of abductions and unspeakable horrors. They were known as the Family Five. But a deep search in the forest found nothing. The family was not found. They had fled. And as far as I know, the family has never been found to this day. As I sat in the police car, shivering from a combination of horror and cold, I couldn't help but think about how close I had come to becoming another victim of the Family Five's nightmarish agenda. I knew that I had survived, but the memory of those lifeless eyes, sinister smiles, and sharp fangs has haunted me forever.
As I sped down the dimly lit stretch of Route 66, my headlights cutting through the darkness, I couldn't help but feel a shiver crawl up my spine. The old stories, the urban legends, they had always fascinated me, but tonight, they seemed too real. You see, I was on my way to my best buddy Jake's birthday extravaganza. Jake's party was at an old, popular, and legendary theme park that wasn't open this late at night, but Jake's family had money. Like, a lot of money. So whatever the family wanted they got, and quickly. Not to mention Jake was his parents' only child and they'd do no wrong, golden boy, adding to how spoiled he was. But I say spoiled lightly, as Jake was as solid a guy as they get. He was kind, pretty humble, and hated talking about his money. Jake was cool, smart, witty, and fun. Everyone loved him, and not because of his family name. He was just a laid-back, all-around great guy. He had been my partner in crime since we were in 2nd grade. Despite my meager upbringing, Jake never judged me and always had my back. So there was no way I was missing his 22nd birthday bash. But to get there, I had to brave the lonely highway that had its own haunting tale. They called him Tommy, a 19-year-old hitchhiker who had met his untimely end on this very road. Urban legend had it that Tommy had been wandering aimlessly, desperately seeking a ride to a party back in 1974. He'd made a grave mistake by accepting a lift from a man who was, as the stories went, completely unhinged. Tommy never arrived at the party. His body was never recovered. And now, on the anniversary of his fateful disappearance, he was said to reappear, seeking a ride to that same party. It sounded like the stuff of nightmares, but as I glanced at the dashboard clock, I realized with a jolt that the time was approaching midnight, the exact moment it was said that Tommy had vanished all those years ago. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I kept my eyes peeled for any sign of a tall figure in a dark hoodie. I knew it was ridiculous to entertain such thoughts, but the eerie silence of the highway made it all too easy to get lost in the legend. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the inky darkness at the roadside. My heart pounded in my chest as I swerved to avoid him. I could see it now, the hood pulled low over his face, the chilling silhouette of a young man. Tommy. I couldn't explain why, but against my better judgment, I slowed down and pulled over. As the figure approached, I rolled down the window. The wind whispered through the trees, and the night seemed to grow colder. "Need a ride?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. Tommy turned to face me, his face hidden beneath the hood. He nodded slowly, and with a strange sense of dread, I unlocked the car doors. As he climbed into the passenger seat, a shiver ran down my spine. The car was filled with an unsettling silence. Tommy didn't speak, but his presence felt heavy, like a secret long buried. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to him on that fateful night in 1974. With each passing mile, the road grew darker, and I began to question my decision. Tommy remained still, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. I could feel his presence growing stronger, as if he was searching for something. "What happened to you, Tommy?" I finally mustered the courage to ask. He turned to me, and in the dim light, I could make out a glimpse of his face. It was pale and haunting, like a specter from the past. He didn't answer my question, but his eyes held a profound sadness that sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, the car sputtered and coughed, and the engine died. Panic set in as I tried to restart it, but it was no use. We were stranded on this desolate stretch of road with Tommy, the enigmatic hitchhiker. Tommy leaned closer, his breath cold against my neck. "I never made it to the party," he whispered, his voice filled with sorrow. I turned to look at him, and for the first time, I saw his face clearly. It was the face of a young man, frozen in time, forever searching for that ill-fated party. In that moment, I realized the truth. Tommy wasn't just a ghostly legend. He was a lost soul, trapped in an endless loop of seeking something he could never find. As the minutes ticked by, Tommy's form began to fade, and my car engine miraculously roared back to life. He smiled, a melancholic smile, and whispered, "Thank you." With that, he vanished into the night, leaving me alone on Route 66, shaken. I restarted the car and sped toward the party, my heart heavy with the weight of the encounter. I never did find out what happened to Tommy that fateful night in 1974, but I couldn't help but wonder if he got his peace in revealing himself to random yet chosen strangers every year on the anniversary of his tragic and untimely demise, as a way to keep his story being told and his memory alive.